Senator, good to see you. Good to see you again. Thanks for being here tonight. As we talk about the opportunities for our community, we oftentimes get mixed between social issues and fiscal issues. And all of us in this room have to balance what we make with what we spend. Can you address a little bit just kind of the attitude right now about the fiscal responsibility or irresponsibility that we see about where we're going with the deficit and the impact that really could have on our country?
I deeply appreciate the question, and I'm going to answer it. Where's Denise Mayes, who is the highest-ranking woman in Latina in the Vice President Biden's office? And more important than that, my treasured friend, there she is, Rosemary Rodriguez's handwriting is what I'm here, listen, and I know there's probably a range of folks here, Democrats, Republicans, unaffiliated voters, liberals, conservatives, whatever. I have said to my progressive Democratic friends all over this state that this needs to be part of their agenda. That this is not, I don't look at this as a conservative issue or a progressive issue. I look at it as the father of 3 little girls who, I'll tell you a story. I was in a living room somewhere in, I was saying, and it's shameful that we're forcing our children to pay this back. $12 trillion of debt, by the way, is what we have right now, $1.4 trillion deficit. My 10-year-old Caroline was there. I told the president this story, and he liked it so much he told her when he was in Denver. When he came, she was there. We walked out of the house onto the sidewalk, and she said, "Daddy," and I said, "What?" And she said, "Just to be clear," she was making fun of me because I use that expression sometimes. She said, "Just to be clear, I'm not paying that back." I think it's exactly the right attitude for her to have. Look, not only do we have $12 trillion of debt, not only have we mortgaged ourselves to the Chinese, but the tragedy of it is we have absolutely nothing to show for it. Absolutely nothing to show for it. We haven't invested in our roads, our bridges, our transportation, our ports, anything. What did we do? Well, we cut taxes for the wealthiest Americans, and we cost our kids $1.4 trillion. We said we're going to cut taxes for the wealthiest Americans, borrow it from the Chinese, and stick our kids with the bill. We have spent $1 trillion on the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We borrowed all of that money from our kids. Medicare Part D, the seniors' prescription drug program that Bush advanced, might be a great program, but we didn't pay for it. The bailout that was ended at the last administration, about $800 billion, not paid for. And then the piece of it that the president and I own, was the recovery package last year, which was roughly $760 billion. All of that adds up to $12 trillion. And we've got to address it. It's immoral to leave this to our children, and I think that, or to the next generation. And it's the reason and there's a bunch of stuff on my website that I'm not going to bore you with about how to deal with this, but I will mention one thing. There is absolutely no way that the regular legislative order in Washington will solve this problem. Because you've got Democrats that are absolutely unwilling to deal with the entitlement question. You have Republicans that are absolutely unwilling to have any conversation about the revenue side of the equation. And the result is we've got a diminishing range of motion here. Why do I say that? The reason is this. 17% of what we spend in our federal government budget is domestic discretionary spending. 18% is military spending. Everything else, which is roughly 65%, is Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and interest on our debt. And by the way, the demographics of this country in terms of the number of people that are retiring versus the number of people entering the workforce does not augur well, for somehow solving that problem on its own. And it's gotten to the point now where economic growth alone will not solve the issue. The painful story that I'm about to tell is both about this issue but also the dysfunctionality in Washington. It is for all of those reasons that about 9 of us on the Democratic side, including Mark Udall and me, said to Harry Reid, we will not vote to increase the debt ceiling, which we had to do, unless we get a vote on a bipartisan commission to create a bipartisan commission to deal with our entitlements and to deal with our revenue and to come back to the Senate and the House for an up or down vote, on to try to solve the problem. This was based on the base closing commissions from a number of years ago, where no one wanted to close their military base, but everybody's happy closing anyone else's military base. Finally, we put some grown-ups in the room and we solved the problem. This was what we were trying to do with this. We got 53 votes, Democrats and Republicans, a majority of the Senate, to support the effort. And it failed because of the filibuster rule. And the reason we didn't get 60 votes was the Democratic Party chairman of the committees, who thought this was an incursion on their prerogatives, which, by the way, it was, because they haven't gotten done what they need to get done, voted against it. And 7 Republicans who were co-sponsors of the legislation, put their name on the legislation, voted against it, including, because they didn't want to give the president, a victory, including Mitch McConnell, the minority leader, who described this as the single most important piece of legislation we could pass this year. He voted. So to his credit, President Obama has formed it anyway, and I think what we need to do is with this, and I'm not a big commission guy generally or a committee guy, but I do think that we need to involve over a 12 or 16-month or 18-month period the American people in this conversation, because when you go out and wander around the state, for example, no one knows those ratios I was describing earlier or how they work together. We've got to make some choices here. And the longer we wait, the harder it's going to be. This is a national security issue for the United States of America, in my view. Sorry for the long-winded answer.